Good afternoon, everybody. Today I'm going to be talking about something that nobody else seems to be talking about. This seems to be a very technical focused discussion. I'm going to be talking about the business end of the cloud, the data governance in a cloud-first world. This cloud-first world seems to be a buzzword. I first heard it 2 years ago in a security conference, and they said, oh, we are using cloud-first as our security policy. Out-of-the-box security, they said. It's like, and most of the third sector is using this. These are small and medium-scale industries using this as their security principles. And all of this afternoon, we've talked about how that's wrong. So this is a little bit about me. I'm Dhivya Venkatachalam. I have spent most of my career in data and information, always in most of it in corporate roles. My last role was the head of data governance teams at Schroders Investments. I'm now a chief consultant at Data Synergy. We focus mainly on information risk governance and compliance capability, and also digital transformation. One of my passions is training, mentoring, and speaking, mainly because I like telling people what to do. So what is data governance? For some people, it's data, and for some people, it's governance. What I mean by that is, for some people, it means having data available, accessible, and accurate, good quality data for decision making. For others, it's about getting the right people, getting policies in place, having procedures which works with this data, in the background, to give you good quality data. It's both. Data governance is a very, very formal representation of how data should be governed. And this is how we do this. Let me come back to that framework again, because I'm going to talk about that in relation to how cloud capability is built into data governance. How is data governance for the cloud different? The reason why we are having this talk is that first point. Cloud is seen as an IT offering. It's always seen as an IT offering. And that's our fault to a large extent, because when we ask for money for a cloud implementation, we go to the business stakeholders and we say, oh, cloud can do everything out of the box. And we ask them for a bunch of money. We put together a business benefit case and everything saying cloud's the silver bullet, the one that you need. And then comes the implementation, when we are actually thinking about and talking about why business stakeholders don't get involved. Because we've told them, no, you're not needed, cloud does everything. The second one is the complexity. See, data governance is a field that's been around for a long time as a discipline. And it works very well with structured transactional data. But when you talk unstructured data, that's where all the complexity comes in. And cloud's mostly about this unstructured data. The third point, the agility and flexibility that cloud provides, is also the biggest challenge that we have as a data governance team. Because data governance is a beast. To get it to move through the layers of data stewards and data owners is hard. And that goes against the principle of having this service on demand. That's a challenge we face. There are operational and regulatory challenges. Even before GDPR, especially in the finance world, we've seen so many regulatory challenges, mainly around storage and processing. That comes to everybody's mind when I talk regulatory challenges. The other challenges are the new capability that cloud brings. New actors, you have the cloud administrator, you have vendors and doing some of your bits. So you are kind of outsourcing a lot of your capability outside, which means new actors are brought into your governance system. This cloud deployment service models and a lot of cloud-based APIs that you have to now track as part of your data governance. Sorry. So how do we do this? How do we do this? How have we done this? And this is our journey to the cloud. data governance for the cloud is always data governance by design. You can only do so much after the data is gone into your clouds. It's before you get into the cloud and during your implementation that you can actually do a lot of governance on. So before you, this is the same traditional data governance journey we start anyways, but for the cloud, it's more important to know your data. You have to know your data. You have to know a lot about your data before we can put them into a regular governance wheel. Build your data dictionary, know your data, classify your data. All the red bits that I've put there, this is my data catalog that I build every time that I have my data governance framework put in at a client's. The red bits are my mandatory bits. I need them to proceed. So that's having the data entity. And also the important bit is the second one, classify. Because you need to put different types of IT controls on different kinds of data. Not all data is created equal. This is something that most people don't get. So you need, if there is a regulatory data or if that's confidential data, your information security policy should define your information classification, which should build back into your data catalog. What we also need is the data lineage to understand where what is. So that's very architecture-led. So you must know your data with a very good data model. This can be a starting point for you can't boil the ocean, not at the beginning. So at least the basics of what data you're going to be putting in and where. So for data governance, for all purposes of data governance, we think of the cloud as the container. I mean, it's more than that, but you think of data governance. What are you going to put into the cloud? It's the same thing as big data. When data lakes first came in, the founder of Pentaho said, data lake is like the lake itself in nature. You put good things in, you get good water. You put garbage in, you get garbage out. It depends. So you kind of are very disciplined about not just the technical security that you put around it, but also the data that you put in and the purpose of the data that you put in. Most companies, what they do is they say, okay, let's put everything in and then resolve it. And that's the beginning of all your problems. It's like a big ball of mud. Data lineage is something that we have to build, where data comes from, where data goes through. If your cloud is the beginning of a process or the end of a process, or if it's something in between, you have to know that. So data architecture in the beginning is a very good discipline too. This is our traditional accountability model, 3-tier structure. In reality, we build more than 3 tiers, but this is the basic. So we have a data governance council. This is all the senior stakeholders working. These are the people accountable for things, but they don't do the day-to-day work. Then there is the steering group where decisions are made. And then there's the working group, which is where the work is done. So in a cloud-based world, we have a few layers to this. So we have to add cloud actors, like representatives from your vendors or whoever is representing it in your IT team back into our working group, and your cloud administrator back into our steering group. So this can be your effective bridge between what the IT and the business should look like. And cloud administrators should always have a seat so that they can have a say in how the data is managed. And also the business can know exactly what you're doing with it. And if you have any problems, this is the first place that we can go to. We build it in 3 tiers because we need cascading levels of responsibilities. And also this is where how you do your tracking. The basic success metrics are set out by the steering group and then measured by your working group. This also helps, it's a question that Francisco asked, how do you extend your team without extending? So I'm going to go next step in and say, how do you extend it into the business without actually extending? Because they are the ones who know the data. The data is for the business. We are facilitators of sorts. So what we say is we build in privacy stewards, like the data stewards, but don't create another security governance framework because that doesn't work. Okay, this is the point that I've been talking about. Deliverables have to be very data architecture led. We have a lot of organizational deliverables, which I've called the data governance deliverables, which we have, even in a traditional thing. But especially with cloud implementation, so big data, or analytics, or digital transformations, we need data architectural deliverables. We have digital twinning, which is the buzzword in data for us now. We do a lot of digital twins. We build schemas of real-world objects. Data flows, built-in control points, so we know exactly where and when are we measuring, and all of them back into your data catalog. If I were to say what is the most important data asset in an organization, I would go with the data catalog, an information catalog. An information catalog, I'm not calling it the data dictionary because there is the thing that data dictionary is a technical thing. An information catalog is a more business way of seeing things. When you add system details into an information catalog, it becomes a data dictionary. But I keep saying information catalog because we need to make that distinction where it is a business resource. Okay, the business as usual. So we've done all this. So we've done our information catalog, we now have our lineages, we have our data architecture models, we know everything there is to know about what went inside. How do we do business as usual? So cloud governance should be an extension of traditional data governance. We don't have to build another governance framework for it because having too many frameworks don't work. How we do it is not system-based. This is a mistake that most of the technically led data governance make, is they have a data stewards for each technology or application. What we need is a business area steward. We can have another technical steward, but that should come after the business steward, because we need to know the purpose of data before how it's applied or how we use it in systems. This is very important because if we build it in a technology-led way, what happens is the limitations and the constraints of the technology become the constraints of the data. Rather than serving the business, we serve the technology. Embed it into an organizational ecosystem. I think that's my next slide. I'll talk about that. Define and track your KPIs. That is, success factors, we have to define it right at the beginning, and tracking has to happen in an operational, everyday way. So that's coming back to the big picture. So if that's my foundations, people, policy, procedure, and process, so we need something for a cloud-based policy. So that is built into a policy. We have a process. And then we build it into the operational model. So we have foundational pieces, which is like the information assets that we have for governance. We build it into a framework, which is like how many times should what are the operating bodies? How many times should they meet? How do we do the agenda? What is the agenda item? Go into that level of depth, because then we wouldn't track action completion. A lot of people have data governance in name only. A lot of organizations do. They have like a council which meets every 2 months, discuss everything, but the actions don't go anywhere. They just meet the next time and then they discuss the same thing again. So that's why we need a framework which is like operational. The way to make such a formal, there is no, data governance is a stick. It's not a carrot. It doesn't give you anything. It's just a stick to beat most people with. So what we do is we build it into something we are beating them with. Just make it a longer stick, like your project governance, You just have like another check. Okay, have you thought about data governance? Into your change management, into risk and audit as a second stage. So we build that layers of audit, start from governance and then audit, and then, build it into information risk framework. And cloud governance should also be part of that framework. So this is the 3 steps that I would like to kind of say. You have the foundations. Foundations are something people don't look at all. Nobody looks at a policy. Nowhere have I seen in my 15 years a policy being enforced, except when it's technical. It is a business policy I'm talking about. But when you build it into a framework and into the ecosystem, into checks and balances that already exist, then it works. Because there's something working. The best way to make something that's new work is to join with something that's already working. So that's why we build it into an ecosystem. So what are the challenges we face? The blue bits are the cloud bits, but the challenges exist anyways. So we have lots of data factors. We deal with a lot of unstructured data today. I mean, when I started with data governance, unstructured data was just Excel files floating around. But today, unstructured data is like 60% of my data that I'm dealing with. Lack of proper taxonomy. A lot of people don't even have information classifications, let alone have a data dictionary. The variety of volume of data has changed, how we interact with data has changed, medium we interact with data has changed. Also, there is a lack of having regular structures working. So when you go to technical teams and say, okay, there is a problem with this, and then they say, that's a business problem. You go to the business and ask, they say, no, that's a technical problem. There is no bridge between these two teams. That's something that we struggle a lot with to make a data governance operational. Number and locations of the source system, not having enough depth. So there are data assets in companies which have there are data catalogs, there are data lineages, there are all sorts of things. But they're never complete. And they don't have to be complete, but at least there should be an inclination to build it after that initial project phase. People in organization, again, what is in it for me is the question that we always ask. So you're going to ask a senior stakeholder to come and say, oh, be accountable for data. Anything goes wrong, you're accountable. What do you give him? Why should he do that? It's something that you should think about. The culture of the company. There are some companies which are very agile. I mean, companies that have grown in the cloud phases have, they adopt it. But not so the bigger giants. It's very difficult to make them move. A number of products and offerings of companies also defined. Then there is the process bit. So data governance is never data governance. It's IT governance, data governance, and cloud governance in a lot of ways. Some people say security governance. So the process of all the three working together, how do we manage it? A lack of documentation is one. We don't want to become document heavy, but having some documentation so there's business continuity is essential. We do everything in a product. I mean, most of the GDPR implementations that happen, very, very good idea, GDPR, but the way it's implemented, most of them that happened in project phase. Nobody knew what to do after 25th of May, but we were all working towards 25th of May. So all of that, the complex business processes. I mean, the more complex it is, the more businesses make it really complex. So if you don't involve business stewards, you have no way of understanding what's happening. Maturity of a process, maturity of the company, these are some of the challenges. This is the slide I have to focus on. It's not the 184th slide, no. I don't know why it is. Best practices. Value creation by moving to the cloud. We talk about a lot about this when we are talking about business case, but we don't communicate enough when we are actually going through the pain of implementation. Everybody remembers the pain. Nobody remembers the value that you give. So that's something that you have to repeatedly communicate throughout the process, throughout the pain. Strong foundation, very, very essential, something everybody's touched on today. Govern data areas, not the platform, not the technology, the application or location. Data areas. You're thinking data areas. When you look at a data steward, there's no cloud steward. There is a data steward for sales or data steward for marketing. Data integrations, efforts, reuse and build from existing infrastructure. This is something that people think, okay, we have a data catalog, but this is a new data catalog. Let's go to that one. We buy a load of tools even without thinking, how will they integrate with our ecosystem? Build living data assets. This is where you're not trying to boil the ocean. This is where you're trying to have a template that is built through your projects and your processes. All your projects add a little more bit to it. There's a central resource, but add a little more every time. Meaningful measures and metrics, that's very much needed. And also react, record, and refine your process every time. That's me.
Thank you. So do we have any questions for Dhivya?
How do you ensure that we do classification right? So you say classification, you need to do classification every time, but how do you ensure the team actually proactively do classification? What is the added value you sell them?
So the classification is done by the business. Yeah, we always need the data stewards first before we start on the classification. So we want the data stewards to tell us why that data is important and why we are classifying it. Most of our trouble comes from the technical team writing the information security policy, and that's the way it is. But the classification should always come from the business. They should give us a reason why that data should be secure. So if we have something like that, then we can go back to business and say, okay, this is a new technology that I'm getting with these 5 confidential data bits added into the technology. Do you want to give me money for the security or no? You know, then things become much more clearer than to say, I'm going to put some data in, I'm going to put some data in. But if you know, when you have classified data in and that classification was done by them, then you have more traction.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Oh, Paul?
Are you aware of any large corporation out there who has institutionalized data classification? Because I'm not. Well, I am one.
Institutionalized data classification. No. But I have 3 that have come very close. And they were not the large giants, because large giants are beasts. You can't classify them all. What the larger corporations have is very good information security policy, which is not enforced back into governance. Or they have, like the bigger banks, I mean, I used to work in this. They have a whole data factory. For every data steward, they have a data team. So they want to just throw money at it or throw people at it and take away the business responsibility so that they can go and make money. Both systems don't work. Yeah, my answer is no, not completely.
Can I take a cheap shot?
Yeah.
Your slides aren't classified.
Oh, that's just mean.
Mean. Say mean. That's very, very mean.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's just like the previous speaker was talking about how he sent it last night. I sent it at 1 o'clock.
Just in time delivery. We are an agile organisation.
Thank you. Yes.
So one of the best practices is build a strong foundation before the journey to cloud. Let's just assume that we haven't done that. And yeah, we're substantially on the journey to the cloud. And how would you start in the middle? Building foundations.
So this is the data governance question.
Yeah.
How do we go back and correct things? Data is not. It's a point coming back. Not all data is created equal. 20% of your data is always more important than 80. Start with a 20. And that should come from your classification, or should come from business reason, or it should be a burning bridge, you know. It can be anything, but start. If you've not built the foundation, try and build it underground. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just add to that?
Yeah.
Eli Lilly did a major bit of work on data classification, and they came to the conclusion of 5%, not 20%.
Yeah.
Can
I
I
mean,
do that?
Yeah.
Make everything restricted unless somebody says so and present a budget saying if I need to protect all the data, that's the budget. Unless you start
protecting that.
telling me what it is and the budget goes to the application owner.
No, but to his point, that is very, very true. When we broadly look at information classification, there are 4 buckets that we do. One is the public bucket, which anybody can have access to. One is the internal bucket, which employees have access to. And then there is the confidential and the secret. When you look at the confidential and the secret, it's very, very tiny portion. Internal is what everything is. But what has changed this equation is GDPR. What GDPR has done is given us like that sensitive data, which has added another level of classification to us. So anything that's personal, anything that's like, you know, can't think of any, biometrics or your sexual orientation, ethnicity, all that has become extra classification. That's where it's gone beyond that 5%. GDPR has changed the equation, and GDPR is been the reason for lots of our classification projects as well. Mainly in retail and all those clients where customers, the bulk of the data. If you look at bigger companies called B2B, no problem at all. It's not changed the equation. Only HR is your biggest chunk. But when you think like end user B2C organizations, the bulk of the data is customer, and people have gone overboard classifying.
When you mentioned GDPR, I think there is also in that process, because it's not only about how the data is handled, it's the process and the consent that has to be to the users that before it was.
It wasn't there, yeah.
So that generates a new approach also.
A lot of, even information governance, we've got lots of prominence in the last 2 years. We've never had that before. GDPR has done a lot of good things, kept me in a job.
Excellent. Thank you, Divya. Thank you, Divya.